Seventh graders, in the first lesson in chapter 2, we're going to review some properties, or sometimes I like to think of the properties as rules in math. Kind of like rules in a game. Not like rules that you follow procedural rules and things like that, but rules in a game that help you to win the game. Okay? If you understand rules in baseball, for example, you understand what a pitcher can do to keep runners closer to the base, then you can play the game more effectively. If you understand the rules and you know how to get somebody out on a fly ball, if they catch it, what is the rule? The runners have to go back to the base, right? And if you understand that rule, then you can play the game more effectively. Understanding these rules help you play the game of math more effectively. The commutative property, for example, is knowing that you can switch the numbers around when you're doing addition. You can switch the numbers around and get the same answer. So you can add them in a different order, and this only applies to addition and multiplication. You can add or multiply in a different order and get the same answers. Okay? That's the commutative property, being able to switch the numbers around and get the same answer. The associative property always contains parentheses. It always has to do with doing the operation in a different order. So there will be 3 terms and 2 operations of the same, either multiplication or addition. And instead of adding the first 2 numbers and then the third number, you can add the second and third numbers and then go back and add the first number. And most of the time you're doing this in order to make the problem more simple. Okay, maybe you combine numbers in a way so that it's easier to add them or multiply them together. So, for example, if you had a problem like this, 4 times 18 times 25, okay? How could you use one of the properties to solve this more easily? Carson? Yeah, switch these 2 around, or actually switch these 2. So you can do what? Why would that be helpful? Can you do 4 times 18 in your head? Not very easily. You probably could if you thought about it for a while. But can you do 4 times 25 in your head?
Yeah.
That's 100, yeah. So doesn't it make sense to make the 100 first? Do 4 times 25 times 18. 100 times 18 is 1800. Right? That makes sense to me. Now, can you do that? Is that legal? Is that?
Yeah.
Why is that legal? What rule applies to that? Nate.
You can switch the order of adding or multiplying.
Did we switch parentheses around them? Did we do these
Switch
first?
the numbers.
We switched the numbers. So which rule says we can switch the numbers? Which rule is that? What's it called? It's the commutative property. We use the commutative property there. Okay? Here's one that might, let's see, we got 56 plus, I like 18 plus 2. Here's one where we could use the associative property. Cole?
I'll do 18, let's do first.
Yeah, if we, instead of doing 56 plus 18, or imagining that the parentheses were there, which shows we'd have to do this first, if we do this first, we can add 18 plus 2 to get 20, and add 20 to 56. And everybody, yeah, 76. You can add that easily. Okay, Okay? And that uses the associative property to do the second addition first, and then go back and add the third number. Daria?
When are we gonna use this, like, what? When would we use this?
When you're adding or multiplying numbers together. Whenever you're adding two or three, works best when you're adding 3 or more numbers. So if you're adding 3 or more numbers, you can remember, I don't have to add them in this order. I could add them in any order I want to. Okay? Or if you're multiplying 3 or more numbers, anytime you multiply 3 or more numbers, you can use these properties. Okay? That's a good question. There's some other properties you need to remember. The multiplicative identity property. Yeah. Or you could just write this. Any number times 1 is its identity. It's the identity property of multiplication. Any number times 1 is that number. We say that that identifies the number in algebra. So that means n times 1 is n. Okay? Anything times 1 is whatever you started with. Roy times 1 is Roy. Right?
Yes.
And you can put this example in your notes. Any number plus 0 is its identity. That's called the identity property of addition, or the additive identity property. The word additive, right here, refers to addition. Multiplicative, which is really fun to say, refers to multiplication. Okay? And we talked about some mental math strategies. A good mental math strategy is to try to make hundreds or tens or powers of 10 whenever you're adding a bunch of numbers together or multiplying a bunch of numbers together. There's one strategy that we talked about. It's called compensation. You don't have to remember that it's called compensation. But it's doing a problem like 6 times 799. In other words, if you went to Target and they had DVDs on sale for $7.99, you found 6 of them that were your favorite movies. So you're going to buy 6 movies for $7.99, but you only have $35. Okay? So you have to figure out, oh, do I have enough money? Or maybe you have a $50 bill. All right, let's $50 bill. Okay? So you think, well, 6 times 8 is 48, right? Plus tax is what you're worried about, right? So let's say that we've got, to find the actual amount, we could think of this as 6 times 8 minus 6 times 1 cent, which is written here. 6 times 8 minus, in other words, take away 1 cent, because we're not talking about $8, we're talking about $7.99. Sit down, Alex. So, when we multiply this number times each of these numbers, this is called the distributive property. And we went through this last year in 6th grade. Distributive means that we distribute that number over the parentheses or multiply it times each of the numbers. 6 times 8 is 48. 6 times 1 cent is 6 cents. So if we take away 6 cents from 48, you've got 47.94. So now you're thinking, oh, 47.94, I think I'll have enough because tax is only 7 cents for each dollar. I might have enough. So then you're going to have to figure out, all right, which of these movies is my least favorite, and then put one back. Okay? This is called the distributive property, when you're multiplying a number times each of the numbers that's in parentheses. Okay? So your assignment is on page 71, it's written up there, 2 to 36 evens. And you're going to practice using the rules and practice some mental math strategies when you're doing these.